Okay, I want to welcome everyone here tonight for another installment of the Berean Torah study. And tonight we are going to be looking at the continuation of John's vision in chapter 12, where in chapter 12 he introduced four characters to us. So let's go ahead and get started with the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who sanctifies us with his commands and commands us to engross ourselves in the words of Torah. Okay, now, if you remember last week, we studied about the woman clothed with the sun, the red dragon, the male child, and Michael the archangel. Those were the four characters that were introduced in chapter 12, and it was very interesting because we also saw that kind of coincided with all of the hoopla, such as it was, about the Revelation 12 sign, with the in the constellation Virgo, with the sun going through Virgo, and then the star, the planets lining up a certain way to form the crown, and then the moon at the foot. And that's great, except for one thing. It happens almost like that every year about this time. The sun lines up there, Virgo, and the moon down there at the bottom in the feet, and the planets may not line up, but so I don't know. I'm not going to say categorically that didn't have some kind of significance. Maybe it will, maybe it'll play out. I'm not really sure, but here we are. The world did not end yesterday. It's a good thing because I still got a lot of things that I need to do. So I'm glad the world did not end yesterday. All right, so we're going to go ahead in Revelation 13 tonight. And you remember that when we had started out before, chapters 12 and 13, we're going to reveal these six things: the woman clothed in the sun, the red dragon, which was Satan, the male child, which was Yeshua the Messiah, and the woman clothed with the sun, that represented Israel, and then Michael the archangel. Now this week we're going to look at the beast from the sea. And then next week we will look at the beast from the earth, meaning, and I'll give it away right now. The beast from the sea, of course, would be what we would consider the anti-Messiah, or the Antichrist, and the beast from the earth would be considered what is known as the false prophet. So anyway, just so you know. All right, and here is, let's go ahead and start out, because when people are on the telephone calling in, first of all, I don't know if they're on there when they're on the telephone, and then secondly, they can't read what we're reading here. So then I saw a beast rising out of the sea that had 10 horns, 7 heads. On his horns were 10 royal crowns, and upon his heads were slanderous names. Now the beast that I saw was like a leopard, his feet like a lion's, and his mouth like a bear's. And the dragon gave him power and his throne and great authority. So this beast, of course, now this is not the first time that we've looked at beasts coming, from our study in Daniel, where we saw several beasts, and the last beast not being really describable as a animal as such, because Daniel just said, man, this was not like anything that I saw in the other beasts. It was more terrible. It was just awful. And so, anyway, this beast here, it has some similarities and some things that we can kind of connect back into Daniel. Now, there's three things about this beast that we're going to look at, and that it is connected with the dragon. You know, the red dragon that we saw last week, he's connected there somehow. And you'll see that in verses 3 and 4. And he's going to have success in deceiving the entire world. And that you'd see in chapter 3 and verses 3 and 4, and also in 8. And then also he will see in chapter 6 and 7, verses 6 and 7, that he is temporarily defeats the saints, God's people. So anyway, and I think I misspelled deceiving there, and it's driving my OCD mind crazy. So I'm going to just change the screen so I don't have to look at it. Okay, now in Daniel 7, the beast that we saw there, it had 10 horns. Now it didn't say anything about having multiple heads but it did have 10 horns. And now the dragon that we saw in Revelation 12 and 2, it had also 10 horns, but it had 7 heads and 7 crowns. So each one of the heads had a crown on it, but then one of the heads, maybe 3 of the heads had 2 horns, and maybe one of the heads, it doesn't tell us how they were distributed, other than there were 7 heads, 10 horns, 7 crowns. So we don't know exactly what that looks like. And then now in Revelation 13 and 1, we've got a beast that's got, again, 7 heads like the dragon, 10 horns like the dragon, and this time, though, he's got 10 crowns. So we don't know exactly what the significance of each one of, all of those may be. I mean, there's a lot of speculation, and the commentators over the years have come up with all sorts of things that they say, and then it's kind of like sort of like reading the Talmud, because Rabbi so and so will say this, and then Rabbi over here says something else, and that's kind of what studying Revelation is about, because you'll get all kinds of interpretations in some of this stuff. So in this chapter, John, he has this apocalyptic vision. Remember that Revelation is apocalyptic literature, and as such, it has the language in it, and the descriptions in it are kind of fanciful, if you would. They're the kind that there's a lot of metaphor there. There's a lot of hyperbole there. So is John, he's seeing a dragon. Well, is that an actual fire-breathing dragon from, like Camelot, or is it something else? But he describes it as a dragon, and his readers would be very familiar with that type of language and that verbiage. So he sees these 2 strange creatures. He calls the first one the beast from the sea, and he calls the second one the beast from the earth. Now, I think we'll see that at this time, the dragon was described as Satan, and it also described that how he was cast from heaven to earth. He was cast out of heaven. And so therefore, he no longer had access to the throne of God. Up until this time, evidently, even though Satan had fallen at this point, he still had access to go and make contact of some sort with God himself, because we know that he carried on his campaign. They call him the accuser. And so we see that, as an example, that Satan went to God and accused, he said, look at your servant Job, how he's got everything. He's got a lot of children, a lot of kids, it's just great. He's got all sorts of stuff there. But, what would happen if, you let me have him for a little bit? And so he's accusing Job of being maybe a hypocrite, or he's a weak. If he didn't have all this stuff, would he still follow you? So therefore, we know that Satan did have some type of access to God and the throne of God. But now we know, and we learned in chapter 12 that he was cast down. It says it took a third of the angels with him. And so whether John is talking about the initial fall of Satan or something else, we can maybe look at it now that says that, okay, Satan no longer has access to the throne. So knowing that his time of final judgment is near, he empowers two world leaders to serve as his human agents on the earth. And tonight we're going to be studying the first of those agents. Now, as the Lord had, two witnesses. Remember, previously we had talked about the two witnesses who were active for 3.5 years. They were able to do all sorts of things that would, basically it would torment the unbelievers, that they could call down fire, they could cast, various plagues and so forth. And so they were killed at this 3.5 year mark. The 3.5 year mark in the tribulation is going to be a very active time. That's going to be where the abomination of desolation is going to occur, which, will be something where the temple is desecrated. And so these two witnesses, they were killed, and then they laid in the street of Jerusalem for 3.5 days, at which time then they were resurrected, revived, to the astonishment of the entire world. Now you can imagine that if these guys had been active in preaching the gospel, telling people to repent, calling down fire from heaven, doing all of these things, basically just being a pain in the neck for all of the world who were not believers, that the Bible says that when they died, the world rejoiced. They had parties. They gave gifts to each other. So, and like I said last week, I can just imagine CNN with their 24-hour coverage and Christiane Amanpour out there talking about these people, and then all of a sudden they're resurrected, and the whole world was terrified because they know what powers though had been given to them. And now they're resurrected, and, they could be expected to be in a bad mood since they had been killed. And that tends to make one in a real bad mood when you're killed. But God called them up to heaven. They ascended into heaven. And so we go on to another chapter. So God had two witnesses. So now Satan has two counterfeit witnesses and through this he hopes to somehow fulfill his plan to defeat God and to somehow place himself in the place of worship and try to defeat God and of course Yeshua. Now, most Bible scholars believe that this beast from the sea is a false political Messiah, and the beast from the sea, it also has some significance in that the people from Israel, Israel was never known as a seafaring nation. The Phoenicians were seafarers, the Greeks were seafarers, even the Egyptians had big fleets, but the Jews, not so much. Even though Solomon had a fleet of ships, he hired the people from Lebanon to actually man the ships, and it was a mercenary navy that Solomon had. So the Jews of Israel, they looked at the sea as something terrifying. They didn't like it. A lot of their literature and so forth talked about the sea as being a bottomless pit, and so that also has some significance of this beast coming from the sea, meaning it's coming from the pit, it's coming from a place of horror. So, but most people, most of the scholars look at this guy as being a political, a false, he's a political Messiah, and he would be known as the Antichrist or anti-Messiah. Now, he establishes himself as the leader of a one God, or of an anti-God, one world government system, and so this person and the system could possibly be thought of as the beast or as one entity. They consider, now when we get to the beast of the earth that came out of the earth, that is going to be a false religious Messiah who heads up an anti-God, one world religious system. Now, it's kind of interesting when you're studying for this stuff that the people have all sorts of ideas as to who the Antichrist is going to be. It's I can remember back in the 60s when John F. Kennedy became president, that a lot of people, they just knew that this Catholic guy was going to be the Antichrist, and that either he was going to be the Antichrist and the Pope was going to be his handler, or maybe the Pope was going to be an Antichrist, and but that John Kennedy was going to be his agent on earth. And I've even saw pictures of this week where somebody had posted that their idea of who the Antichrist was going to be, and boy, they had all of the last 8 popes lined up there as to that was and again Catholicism has been the whipping boy for a lot of the people that study Revelation, but we don't know who the Antichrist is going to be. We don't know who the false prophet is going to be. Tonight we're going to maybe explore some things and possibly have some ideas that I think we've already talked about them a little bit in previous classes. So now, whether or not knowingly these 2 leaders, they'll be receiving their power, according to John, directly from Satan, and they act on his behalf. How that's going to work, I don't know, because if would they recognize that there is a Satan or some kind of a power? who knows? They may just have this evil in them. But these guys are they're the very embodiment of evil, and their intentions. I don't know. They may or may not be good, but they may be just intentions of survival or conquest or whatever. But their actions will bring only death and destruction to the world. So that's going to be the end result of it, no matter what. So, and as we'll see, most of the world follows these two leaders, these two human beasts, I guess you could say, and their political and religious systems. Now, I think that we could possibly look at the idea that probably I had other. We could look at this, the political system and the religious systems are going to be closely allied, and they will have similar goals. They may actually be so close together that they're almost one and the same. Now, the only exceptions, the people that are going to be following these guys are those that follow Yeshua. They're the ones who's got their names written in the book of life, as it says later on. And then there's going to be a third group of people that they're not going to take the mark of the beast, but they're not believers either. They're just agnostics or whatever, survivalists. I don't know who they will be. Probably just a hodgepodge of people all over the world that are not going to be believers, but at the same time, they're not going to take the mark of the beast. They can be, maybe what people are talking about today being preppers or something like that. I don't know. In fact, I don't know. That'd be a good time. Has anybody even got an idea of who these, kind of, maybe you can't name a name, but some of the things that maybe you've heard or read that the Antichrist and the false prophet may actually be? Anybody got a pet idea as to who, or something that they had talked about? Okay, Joseph said that I've read of the 12th Imam from Islam possibly filling the Antichrist role. Yes, if you're a reader of Joel Richardson and what's it, Walid Shubat. That's it. And let's see, who's the Perry Stone, I believe, is also in on that thing too. So those are the some of the names besides the Pope and Catholicism that these could be related to. And in fact, I can remember over the years, the idea of revelation has and who these people are, it changes because as world systems change, we have different ideas because back in the day, I heard one of these guys. His name was John Hall, and I heard him as a just as a young teenager, I think it was, and he was about 3 days older than Dirt then, but he would talk about how that one of the reasons that people will invade Israel is not just because of the hate of Israel, but for oil, that they're going to come in and want to take over Israel because of the vast amounts of oil that Israel would have. And now this is the guy that's telling is teaching this stuff in the late 50s, early 60s when I heard him. And everybody, he would say, yeah, oil. And, back in those days, there was not even a hint that there would be oil or gas associated with Israel. And of course, now we know that Israel has vast reserves of natural gas offshore of Israel, and there are some pretty good indications that in the Golan Heights that there are going to be some oil fields there that will rival anything that Saudi Arabia has. So there's the idea that somebody could be wanting to come in and take over Israel for the oil, or at least to maybe stop their production of oil or whatever, but that the war could very well be about oil. So the guy was, John Hall seems like he's going to be correct on that. But he was one that taught also about the pre-tribulation rapture of the church. So, and I disagree with that. Some people believe in that, some people don't, but it's not something that any of us are going to be able to prove one way or the other right now. So anyway, we've talked about that in Daniel's beast, it was more closely related to kingdoms. You remember that he saw the statue, the head of gold and the torso of silver, the thighs of brass, and then the legs of iron, and those equated to Babylon, Syria, Greece, and Rome. And then the beasts that followed also could be associated with those, except that the last beast. In some of the description of the last beast, I think and I'm one of those ones that I'm beginning to think that possibly this last beast or this last kingdom, empire or so forth, that is going to be the end time empire is possibly Islam. Because, before, I'd heard, okay, it's going to be renewed, resurrected Roman Empire. And that, it's a 10-nation confederation. And then, boy, when the European Union came into being, it was 10 nations, and everybody, they knew immediately that that was going to be the 10-nation confederation centered in Rome, and it was going to be the Pope and all of that. Well, then they had, I think it got up to maybe 23 nations in the European Union, and so that kind of blew that theory a little bit. So, we sort of change our view of this and our perception of it as time goes on, and we look at different, as history goes on and things change. So, this Revelation 13 beast that we see is related to that, the beast of Daniel, very closely related to it, I think. And one of the things that gets me is when they're talking about this beast in Daniel, where it goes through, it's terrible, it's got the teeth of iron, and it crushes everything in its path. Now, the Roman Empire, certainly when they were on the battlefield, they were very well organized, and they crushed their opponents in many cases. But when they would come into a country, they didn't tear down the infrastructure. They built on the infrastructure. They didn't tear down the religions. they adopted that religion or co-opted whatever religion it was for their own purposes. That's why you see with the Greek and Roman mythology that they're pretty much just the same thing. Just they changed the names to protect the innocent. There, you had what is it? The god of the sea was Neptune or Poseidon, depending on whether you were Greek or a Roman. Then you had Zeus and whoever Zeus was the Greek one, and I can't remember who the Roman did, Jupiter. All right, thank you. And so they just changed the names, but basically it's kind of stayed the same. They didn't tear things down. Whereas if we see Islam, as they come into a country, they absolutely destroy anything and everything that was based on, the religious or cultural underpinnings of that country. We saw it so many times when ISIS or the Taliban went into the various countries, even though they were in some cases Muslim countries, like Iraq or Afghanistan. They would go in and tear up or blow up some of these old ancient shrines that had been there for centuries or, maybe even longer, millennia, in fact. And I think they blew up, the Taliban blew up some kind of a big carving in the side of a mountain that had been put there by Mongols or Chinese or something like that. And so that's where, I kind of get the idea that possibly they're talking about Islam because of the manner in which they go in and they just tear stuff up and just crush everything in its path. If you've ever been to, let's see, Caesarea Maritima, the Caesarea that's by the sea there in Israel, which was, one of Herod's summer palace places. And you'll see where they've lined up statues and so forth. They're kind of broken up, the nose is broken off of them or the arms or legs or whatever. And they said that these were all destroyed or defaced by the Muslims when they came in and conquered, the Saracens, when they came in and conquered Jerusalem in 1100, 1100, something, whenever it was that they did that. And so, that's just the way that they do things. So anyway, going on with our beast here, I think that it said that John said that it was a leopard body or leopard-like, and so what's a leopard? They're stealthy, they're quiet, they're sneaky, and they're when you think of a leopard, what I think of a leopard is where it's all dark around. I'm looking around in the jungle and all I see is this just two big yellow eyes that you can see out there right before he jumps out and takes my head off. That's what I think of as of the leopard. And then he said, but he had feet like a bear. And with the bear, I used to think bears were kind of slow and lumbering and so forth until I saw a GoPro and it was on the internet where some guy was just riding his bicycle and cross country out through the woods, happy as a clam, and he ran into this either black bear or grizzly bear or something up in the wilds of Alaska, and this bear started chasing him, and this bicyclist was it was all he could do to stay ahead of this bear, but So maybe they're not so slow, but a bear is definitely something that is crushing. It is powerful. It can really tear stuff up. And then it said that he had the mouth of a lion, and that that means to me it's authoritative, it's ferocious, it's the what we call the king of the jungle, even though they don't live in the jungle, they live in the grasslands. But the lions being authoritative, the idea of being in charge, and like we've said before, this beast is considered by many the Antichrist or the anti-Messiah, and so we'll see that Satan looks at the he looks at believers as being an enemy because we're standing between him and conquest of the world. So the Bible says there that he's going to be attacking believers through the anti-Messiah and the false prophet. So that's going to be when the Antichrist, anti-Messiah comes and reveals himself. That's at the midway point of the tribulation. That's when the abomination of desolation, and then we'll have the great tribulation. Now, one thing that I kind of wanted to bring out today is the idea. Just a thought. The word Antichrist. It's in Greek. It's Antichristos. I guess that's the way you'd say it. It only appears in the Bible 5 times, and actually none of them in Revelation, as that would happen. But it appears in 1st and 2nd John. That's the only 2 books that appears in. And one of the let's see, 1st John 2:18 is a good example of this. It says, "Little children, it is the last hour, and as you have heard that the Antichrist is coming." Then here John is saying he referred to this as an individual, and he's kind of captured the imagination of everybody. And but a lot of people will probably be ignorant of who the Antichrist is going to be, who he is. And I think that in the first 3.5 years of the tribulation, all sorts of nasty stuff is going to be coming along, and even before that, there's going to be all sorts of bad stuff happening. Where the Bible talks about the birth pains leading up to the tribulation time. Now, normally we think of Antichrist or anti-Messiah as something opposed to or against something. But what if it can also mean instead of? And so think with me on this one, that so instead of saying that this person is going to be for this first 3.5 years of the tribulation is going to be the against Christ, against Messiah, against Yeshua, he's going to be the person who is instead of. He takes the place of, because maybe he's more, his message is more attractive to people because it doesn't require that they uphold any particular standard of morality, and it's just something that maybe it's a little bit more attractive to them, and so that takes the place, and we talk about sometimes the idols that we have in our lifetimes today of the good house, the good job, the money in the bank. If you were in the Tree of Life yesterday, you heard me talk about that as being idols that can sometimes come between us and God, or we rely on those things. So the anti-Messiah could be the instead of Messiah. Now, let me stop right there. Anybody got an idea on that? Do you think that's totally bogus, or if maybe you had not thought about that before, that this the Antichrist of the first 3.5 years would be the instead of Yeshua, and that he would be an attractive figure. The Bible sometimes calls him an angel of light. No comments. Nobody's going to bite on that one, huh? Okay.
I'll bite.
Okay.
That concept was propagated by Tim LaHaye and his partner in the Left Behind series.
It was, but at the same time, there is some, and I am not a fan of that bunch of books there, the Tim LaHaye stuff. But what I'm thinking about on that is that a lot of people are going to buy into this one world system, one world religion, and so forth, because of there's going to be turmoil in the world, and this guy is going to come on the scene as being able to work through and make a solution and come up with something, and people will buy into that. And that's where I say that it could be, when you think about the Antichrist, well, sure, we'll be able to recognize him. Well, maybe you won't, because he's going to look good enough, and then he will reveal his true self then halfway through at the abomination of desolation.
That's right, Rabbi. The thing that I wanted to point out is that for the last 3 or 4 presidents that the United States has elected, everybody has been looking for that president to save the country. Even Donald Trump was looked on as the guy who's going to finally save the country.
Right.
And that's not what is going to save this country. It's going to be repentance and a look toward Yeshua to save this country.
If anything does save this country, and that's right. That's a thought too. Is that a lot of people will, when we study Revelation, you get a Revelation teacher that that's their shtick. That's what they do. And people inevitably will ask them, okay, well, what about America in the end times? Where is America in the end times? And I look at it and I just have to say, I don't see it. I don't see it as an entity. We're certainly not a protector of Israel, and it could very well be that America, as we know it, has, even, who knows, California secedes, Texas secedes, then it just, things fall apart maybe. I don't know. I just don't see, we have to remember that the book of Revelation and all of the stories there are Israel-centric, Middle Eastern-centric, and rather than say Europe or the New World would be. So, but anyway, I just think that the idea of the initial appearance of this Messiah, anti-Messiah, could very well be an attractive person that just kind of sneaks in under the radar, as it were. And even in the idea of Satan always has a counterfeit for anything good. Yeshua went around doing good. This guy may very well go around doing good at the very beginning. First John 2:18, John spoke of the Antichrist and many Antichrists. There's a spirit of Antichrist, and so that spirit of Antichrist, we saw that in, well, you can see the spirit of Antichrist in the Holocaust, in Hitler, and Stalin, and so forth. And someday it's going to have its culmination and actual be flesh and blood in something or someone in Revelation, in the end times. The Bible also calls the Antichrist the little horn. That's in Daniel 7 and 8. The king of fierce countenance. That's Daniel 8:23. The prince that shall come. That's Daniel 9:26. The willful king. That's Daniel 11:36 through 45. And John 5:43 says, the one who comes in his own name, and that Israel will actually receive as their Messiah. And then it's also in 2 Thessalonians 2 and 3, he's called the son of perdition, the man of sin, the lawless one. So anyway, we're going on here. We got to, or I'm not going to be able to finish any of this tonight. One of the heads seemed to have been slain. Okay, that was a fatal wound. Let me read this. One of the heads seemed to have been slain, but the fatal wound was healed. The whole earth was amazed and followed the beast, and they worshiped the dragon because he had given authority to the beast. They also worshiped the beast, chanting, "Who is like the beast, and who can make war against him?" Now, if you're familiar with some Jewish liturgy, which one? What are you reminded of in here? Anybody? Mika Mocha, who is like thee? And so these people are, they're making a parody of Jewish liturgy, is saying, well, who is like the beast? Who can make war against him? And they're just saying that, that. So I just thought that was kind of interesting, what that could be. One of the heads received a mortal wound. It's been pointed out possibly that, when John F. Kennedy was shot in the head, people looked at it and said, oh, well, is he going to recover from this head wound? And if he does, it'll be a miracle because, half his brain was blown out. So no, it didn't happen that way. Schubert and Richardson point out the idea that possibly it could be the Ottoman Empire that supposedly, had received the mortal wound. They had been defeated in World War I, and the empire was broken up. But now it's revived, and Islam has, just flourished all over the world, and so possibly, metaphorically again, that could possibly be the mortal wound that was revived. And it says that the recovery caused the world to follow him. So there may very well be another incident someplace, but the idea of the Ottoman Empire being revived into Islam today is also an attractive looking. It's another idea, like some people used to think of the Roman Empire being revived, and possibly, who knows, maybe the idea of Islam being the one. As we go on, it may not be, but that is some of the thought today. And who is like the beast? Contrast this with Exodus 15:11, where it says, "Who is like you, Adonai, among the gods? Who is like you, glorious in holiness, awesome in praises, doing wonders?" So, like I said, I got ahead of my slides here, but it's almost a parody, where they're mocking the Bible. Going ahead in Revelation 13:5 through 6, the beast was given a mouth with uttering great boasts and blasphemies. it was given authority to act for 42 months. Then he opened his mouth and with blasphemies against God to slander his name and his tabernacle, that is, those dwelling in heaven. So we see, and that's, again, kind of looking at the beast here as finally revealing himself at the midway point of the tribulation, and that's where he comes in with the blasphemies and the great boasts, and he says he was given authority to act basically for another 42 months, and he opened his mouth, he blasphemed God, and he blasphemed the tabernacle, his name, and even those that are in heaven. Now, okay, why those in heaven? Well, because they're out of his reach. The saints, the people who the beast or any of Satan's minions over the centuries has killed because of their faith, those people are now safe in the arms of God. They are not going to be affected by this latest onslaught of Satan. Now, and also there are those, the ones that teach the pre-tribulation rapture say that he's slandering, he's blaspheming or slandering the saints because they've already been raptured and they're up in heaven now, and so there's nothing he can do about it, and he can't get to them. So that's another thought that with those that teach the pre-tribulation rapture. So it says that he will be able to deceive the people of the world. Now, some of the stuff that we see here is also similar to what we had seen, what Daniel had seen, and that we could look at and say that's the characteristics of Antiochus Epiphanes. Now, I believe he's just a prototype, because I think that when Yeshua came by and he talked about it, he was talking about a future time. He did not allude to Antiochus Epiphanes as being the tribulation, and now we're going to have the great tribulation. He's talking about a future time, and he says after those times then will come the great tribulation, and that they would have to be shortened because then no one could survive it. And so this 42 months of the beast, I believe, of the actual monstrous beast part of him, equates to the last half of the tribulation. And going on with 7 and 8, he was also permitted to make war against the Kedoshim and overcome them. And he was given authority over every tribe and people and tongue and nation. All who dwell on the earth shall worship him, everyone whose name has not been written from the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who was slain. All right, so we see here that this beast is given authority to basically defeat the believers. Now, it says that he's going to overcome them. That does not mean that he's going to be able to overcome our faith or make us change religions. It just means that he's going to be able to destroy this old earthly body. And what does the Bible tell us is don't fear the one that can destroy the body, but fear the one that can destroy the soul. So we really should not even have to worry about if we're still alive during those days, and if we are killed for our faith, then we know where we're going to be going. But it says that some will be killed, some will be captured, and but it does say that he's going to have authority over every tribe and people and tongue and nation. So up until this time, all the troubles and trials all over the world, I think will be isolated, perhaps. and maybe not isolated, but there will be pockets. Possibly the United States and the New World would be less affected than the Middle East. So the Bible, though, tells us that now he's going to be given authority over every tribe and people and tongue and nation. So that kind of tells me he's going to be a worldwide dictator, and he's going to be able to defeat those that have not, those that are believers, and those that are that have not taken the mark of the beast. Now, next week we're actually going to be talking about the mark of the beast and what that might mean. And so looking at verse 8, all who dwell on the earth, the way that that's used in the Bible, all who dwell on the earth, is generally meant to define those who were not either God's chosen people or people who were not believers or saints. It's the others, the pagans or whatever, all who dwell on the earth. Because remember, we're while we may dwell on the earth, this earth is not our home, and that sort of idea. And so we just know it's going to be bad, and at the end times he will be able to defeat bodily the saints. Finally, if anyone has an ear, let him hear. If anyone is meant for captivity, to captivity he goes. If anyone is to be killed by the sword he must be killed. Here is the perseverance and faith of the Kedoshim. Now, all right, this last verse to me is I wouldn't say problematic. Yeah, maybe it is problematic in trying to interpret what it does mean. John is saying here, okay, now listen up, folks. Here, if you have an ear, here, listen to this. And so then he says, if anyone is meant for captivity, to captivity he goes. Now, if you look at the different translations, you see that some of them say, well, if you partake of the persecution of the saints and you are an agent for this, then you just reap what you sow is what it amounts to. That if anyone is it says if anyone is meant for captivity, to captivity he goes. So if you look at at the King James version, it kind of tells you, it kind of leads you to believe that, okay, if you participate in making someone a captive, then you're going to be a captive. And if you kill anybody for being a believer, if you're an agent of this evil, then you're going to be killed too. But then the other side of it is that, okay, whoever is God has designated is going to be a captive is going to be a captive, and whoever's going to be killed by the sword will be killed by the sword. And it says, okay, here's the perseverance and the faith of the saints of the Kedoshim. So here he's saying, look, God has a plan. He's got it worked out that if you're to be a captive, you will be. If you're going to be martyred for your faith, you will be. But, obviously you're going to have your reward. So just hang in there. Whatever is going to happen to you, God has you in his hand. He's got it all under control. And we finish out with that. Next week, we'll start with the looking about the beast from the earth, meaning, and that will be the false prophet and what all that is going to mean. So